at a time when the likely Democrat nominee, President Joe Biden, is working to convince the country that with Bidenomics, things are looking up.
They call my plan Bidenomics. I'm not sure they meant it in a totally complimentary way at the time. But guess what? It's working.
But is it? More than 65% of Americans say the country is headed in the wrong direction. And here's the reality for some voters we talked to here in Wisconsin this week.
We have noticed a dramatic increase in prices at the grocery store just across the board.
Gas is high and food is high. A lot of people out here homeless because they can't buy food.
It's tough when you got mortgage rates at 7-8% versus 2 to 3. It's just you can't afford the house anymore.
Inflation is ridiculous. It's killing us out here.
Now, there's a few things we need to understand about this inflation problem. We need to look at this as adults. Everyone wants their politician to say, I'm going to end inflation. Everyone wants to believe their politician when they say, I'm going to end inflation. But the truth is, there's only so much American politicians can do to end inflation. And that's because inflation is a global problem. It's not an American problem. Now, the causes of inflation, one is coming back from COVID. There was a little more than a year where a lot of countries were shut down and a lot of production wasn't happening in those countries. So that has caused supply chain issues and other issues. But an even bigger reason for the inflation is that the country of Ukraine, which is a large oil producer and a large grain producer, hasn't produced anything because they've been too busy fighting off the Russians. And Russia, another country that is a large oil producer and a large grain producer, we are not trading with. So if you look at the G7 nations, overall in the G7 nations, inflation was at 4.6%. In the United States, it was only 4%. So we're doing better than the G7 as a whole. Right? Countries like the UK was up at 7.9%, Italy up at 7.6%. Only 2 of the G7 nations are doing better than us as far as inflation is concerned in 2023, and that's Canada and Japan. So Bidenomics and the Inflation Reduction Act has been working. If you want to look at inflation in the United States, looking over a 13-month period from June 2022 to June 2023, inflation has steadily been reduced. Inflation was up at 9.1% in June 2022. It's now down to 3% just 1 year later by June 2023. Month after month, for 13 months straight, inflation has decreased in the United States. So the Inflation Reduction Act is doing what it's meant to do. It is reducing inflation. Now, no one is happy about inflation. It is making life more difficult for Americans. Prices are going up. But our current administration has done a very good job fighting inflation, and there's only so much that can be done. We have to understand that inflation is a global issue, not an American issue. And an American politician can only do so much to fight inflation. The other thing to realize is that this Great Recession that everyone knew was coming following COVID has not come. The Biden administration has done an excellent job with our economy fighting off that recession. The jobless rate has been going down month after month, and although inflation is a huge issue and it is making things tough on the American people, it has been reduced month after month, and compared to the rest of the world, America is doing very, very well as far as inflation is concerned.
Some news.
We have a Fox News alert. The January jobs report just released. The U.S. adding 517,000 jobs last month.
That is much stronger than economists expected. They thought 185,000. Unemployment drops to 3.4.
That's the lowest since 1969.
Wow.